You are listening to the On the Blueline podcast, covering the National Hockey League and more hockey news. Here are your hosts now, Phil Bernardi and Chad Van Doorzen. And welcome, folks, to the On the Blueline hockey podcast. I'm your host, Phil Bernardi, and my partner,
Chad Van Doorzen.
We'd like to welcome you. Well, we had a great week in hockey, didn't we, Chad?
Oh, yeah, we did, Phil.
I'd like to start off with the Blackhawks against the Predators. I mean, that was a pretty good game.
Oh, man, that crowd was ready for them.
And it was exciting, flashy. I mean, a lot of Hawks fans made the trip down to Tennessee. Maybe saw a good little show at the Grand Ole Opry.
Yeah, I saw the two people right behind the Nashville coaching bench, and, you know, they were pretty funny in that game. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, they gave me a few chuckles during the broadcast.
Yeah. Taunting that coach.
Well, Laviolette has done a pretty good job with Nashville. Especially, I'd have to say, their backup, UC Saros. He's been kind of under the radar. He was the starting goaltender for Nashville that game.
Yeah, real impressive. You know, he's had a really good season as a backup.
It seems as though Nashville always churns out good goalies. You know, there was Chris Mason there, Thomas Vokoun, Dan Ellis for a while. I mean, now Pecorine.
Yeah, and, you know, that and their defensive
even Scott
pair.
Darling was, a Nashville Predator
Oh, yeah.
player at one point.
Yeah,
So
they definitely do a good job on. That's a really good point right there.
I want to say their goaltending coach is Mitch Korn. He's pretty famous in the goaltending world. But the starting goaltender was, for the Blackhawks, Corey Crawford. So we had a nice matchup between a starter and a backup, a younger guy in UC Saros. And I'd have to say Nashville really controlled the play in the first 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yeah, they kept up with the momentum, and that was some real strong. And I was worried there for the good first 2 minutes of it.
Well, it did lead to Roosevelt taking an interference penalty. And then later on, McLeod for Nashville and Jordan Tutu for the Blackhawks had a little tussle. It wasn't what I thought it would be for a hockey fight. It was more like a little wrestling match. Because it kind of looked like to me that Tutu was holding on to McLeod's jersey for dear life. He didn't really want to let McLeod let his hands free.
Yeah, McLeod wasn't going to let it go either. That guy was really on his role-playing game.
I'll have to say, because he used to be an Avalanche player, he was a good enforcer and he was a good gritty player.
Yeah.
More towards the enforcer side, but still a good fourth-line player, smart. Could take a face-off if your centerman got kicked out, which is you haven't really seen that out of a fourth-liner since Zenon Konopka.
Yeah, you don't see it a whole lot often. You know, it's the Rats that took over the NHL, not the big tough guys. But he's definitely got a lot, along with his toughness. Like you said, he can take the face-offs. That's a big skill set to be able to have an asset on your team.
Oh, yeah, especially as a winger. And then later on in the period, there was a Nashville penalty, and Kane scored a nice power play goal, the wrist shot from the top of the face-off circle, beating Saros glove side for the post and in. It was assisted by Seabrook and Panic, but, man, that shot was money.
That was money. Oh, yeah. And, you know, the way that they were able to set it up after, you know, the Nashville sitting on the blue line like they do, and, you know, them going, they started off down low, then then the puck followed the Panarin, and then it went to Seabrook. You know, Seabrook sends a nice dish, and Kane with the patience, you know, right through the blocker side and goal.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and just getting that post and in, it was nice to see, because, you know, that's when you know the shooter really picked his spot.
Yeah, you know, it was also nice to see the Hawks, you know, flip the momentum from that 2 minutes, you know, against Nashville. I was going to see how, I knew that they were going to do it, but it was just when and how. And, you know, they flipped it pretty quick.
Yep, and then for the second period, Crawford, you know, started off the first period just as strong, or the second period, just as strong as he did the first period.
Yeah, I mean, it was 10-1 in shots, you know, at the end of the first, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very rough. I have 17-11 in favor of Nashville for the first period, but man, it really did seem like Nashville It probably was 10-1 at one point.
Yeah,
because they really controlled that first period.
They bullied Trevor Van Riemsdyk with the first hit in the first and the one in the second. You know, they were definitely eyeballing him. I don't know why, but you know, maybe just to intimidate him a little bit. But that was definitely another one of their strategies in this game.
And then after Crawford's strong play, we had Jordan Tutu get a nice garbage goal. I would say he put it over Saros's blocker. It looked like it was blocked by a defenseman, Seabrook's shot, because they gave the assist to Keith and Seabrook, for the second goal. And Tutu, you know, he was really excited, you know, scoring against his former team, the Predators.
Yeah, you know, the patience also after collecting that rebound and holding on to his stick. You know, that's a veteran support that you're getting from Tutu. Is, you know, he's a big asset on that team because, you know, I mean, there's 8 rookies on that team you know, at the beginning of the season, and you know, it's great to see him finally score his first goal in 38 games.
Yeah, he might not play every game, but he knows how to still play when you plug him in. He knows what his role is, and he's a good role player. Then we had Victor Arvidsson. He got his first goal of the game. So Subban's pass, you know, went off Ryan Johansson's stick of Nashville. It looked like he may not have had 2 hands on the stick fully, and the pass went off his blade, and Arvidsson just skated past Seabrook and Keith, just went right through him to pick up the loose puck, and then shot it right between right underneath Corey Crawford's blocker, in between the blocker and the pad. Yeah,
it was one of PK Subban's, you know, that's what he's famous for, you know.
I mean, he really put some mustard on that pass. It to go off Johansson's blade like that. I mean, Johansson's a centerman, so he knows how to have 2 hands on the stick, but it was a little bizarre for me to see that happen from, you know, I would say Johansson's now a really good young player after these few seasons, after he came over from Columbus.
Oh yeah, Johansson, you know, the puck, he definitely had some puck possession, which is what they needed. You know, he grinds it out, and yeah, strong power forward.
And then right after Arvidsson's goal, Taves got a nice unassisted power play goal to make it 3-1. It was a nice picking up the loose change in front of the net. UC Saros looked like he was way out of position for that goal.
Now, that goal was it was roofed?
I believe so, yeah. But Taves, you know, he got the rebound, and you shouldn't be out of position for a rebound, but most goalies always are. So it was a good thing that Taves was right there picking up the change, you know, putting the biscuit in the basket.
Yeah, that's, you know, one of the many goals that, you know, if you notice that Taves scores, if he gets 30 goals, 20 of them most likely are in that position that he's always in, picking up the change.
So now this next goal that Nashville scored to make it, 3-2 after the Taves goal, it was scored by Kalle Järnkrok. So the puck was in the neutral zone, and Seabrook happened to bat the puck while he was in the defensive zone, and the puck went into the neutral zone. So now no one can touch the puck. Otherwise, the faceoff then goes in the Blackhawks zone. Well, what happens is Järnkrok just picks the puck up and goes straight through Keith, and Seabrook again splits the D and just uses Seabrook as a screen, and Crawford can't see the puck go top corner over his glove.
You know,
and this was with 42.8 seconds left.
Yeah, it definitely happened so fast, and you could tell, like, it just felt like there's, you know, when he was going one-on-one, he used the guy as a
screen. Yeah, he used Seabrook as, you know, a piece of plywood basically in front of Corey Crawford.
Yeah, and usually like those pucks get, like, you know, deflected, and you know, this Järnkrok guy came in, you know, but
well, they don't always get deflected when the goalie is screened.
Right. Well, I mean, the way I saw it is, you know, Seabrook, I think he had the stick length to be able to poke check it. For some reason, he just doesn't, and that allows this guy to just come steamrolling in and make a beautiful shot, glove side.
Yeah, I mean, I think Seabrook should have just caught the puck and then set it down and passed it over. I mean, why are you batting the puck?
Yeah.
This isn't the defensive zone. You can't really do a hand pass,
You saw it in the first period and it worked to clear the zone, but
But they still played the puck in the defensive zone. Nobody could play the puck then. It had to be picked by Nashville. Otherwise, it was going to be a face-off automatically in the Blackhawks zone.
right.
So for the start of the third, Arvidsson picked up his second goal of the game from Johansson and Forsberg to make it 3-3. We were talking about drop passes earlier today, and Johansson made a beautiful drop pass to Arvidsson.
Yeah, and it was just like there was zero gap almost. It was just like that slight little. It was, I don't know. It was about like an inch that he had. Everything else was covered. Crawford was on his game in this game.
He beat him short side over the shoulder.
Yeah, I really feel like that line of Forsberg, Johansson, and Arvidsson, they were put together, the three righties, to attack the glove side of Crawford.
So for the first 10 minutes of the third period, I thought that the goalies, Saros and Crawford, both were brilliant and had to make great saves in the first 10 minutes of that third period. And then Crawford made a huge save on Forsberg through a screen with about, I would say, 8 minutes left in the third period. And then that helped turn the momentum in the Hawks' favor, because then Taves and Panic came down the wings, and Campbell was down the slot, picked the puck up, made it 4-3. It was set up perfectly by Taves.
Yeah, that button hook that you were saying earlier.
He just pulled into the zone, waited for Campbell to just make a beeline, passed it right to him, right like maybe at the top of the circles in the slot, and let him have a couple steps, and bam, he just put it home over Saros, and then Kane topped it off with an empty net to make it 5-3. I thought it was a good game by the Hawks, but Nashville definitely gave them a challenge.
Yeah, it definitely shows, where the Hawks are at, and it shows where the Predators are at. And, this game, the Hawks came in against New York. They were playing big, the Hawks players were, playing big minutes before that, and Nashville was rested, and, Hawks still prevailed, and they showed who they are.
Yeah, even the shots show how close of a game it was. Hawks got 11 through 3, 33. Nashville had 17, 8, 10 for 35 through 3. 35 and 33 shots, that's a pretty good amount. And then there was a ton of blocked shots, too. Chicago went for 2 for 2 on the power play. Nashville went 0 for 1, but Nashville owned the face-off circle with 56%.
Yeah. Hawks got some work to do on that face-off tack, because winning face-offs when it comes to the playoff time, well, that's crucial.
Well, yeah, but, good thing the power play was clicking that game.
Yeah.
Right?
That's for sure.
So then our second game was a really good one in the Western Conference. It was St. Louis at Minnesota, and St. Louis won this game 2-1. I thought it was really good because you had Jake Allen in net and Devin Dubnyk in the other net, both starters. And this is probably, I would say, 2 of the top 4 teams in the Western Conference.
Yeah, I would say.
Who was your other top team besides Chicago?
Well, in that division, you have Minnesota at number 1, Chicago, and then Nashville. And the wild card spot, St. Louis is second, Calgary's first.
So who would you say is the number 4 team out of the entire Western Conference besides Chicago, Minnesota, and St. Louis?
Number 4 team?
Top 4 teams. You can only pick one other team. It has to be from the Pacific.
I would definitely go. It's tough, but I would say San Jose.
Okay. So you put San Jose in the top 4 then.
Definitely.
It's especially, with San Jose humming like they are right now. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. Yeah, it was a good matchup. So Perron started off the scoring for St. Louis. It was halfway through the first period. It was a deflection from Parenko's slap shot. And now this is what they always teach the defensemen. And even, from Don Cherry, keep the puck low. Parenko's shot looked to only be about 2 inches off the ice, and Perron just, lifted the stick blade maybe about half an inch off the ice and made a deflection that went from, a leg pad save to going right over Dubnyk's blocker, top corner. Oh, that was nice. At the start of the second, Allen stopped the first shot in the second and in the first and came up with several key saves in the second. Berglund deflected a puck off the crossbar that was no goal, and it was a hell of a deflection.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the ways to beat Dubnyk is all the actions off the shot, and St. Louis, they're probably the team out of that Central Division or maybe in the Western Conference that nobody does it better but them.
I mean, I haven't seen another team in the Western Conference maybe use a guy in front and use deflections as much as they have.
Yeah.
And you got to really do that against Dubnyk, like you said, because he's a big guy. You got to get deflections, and you got to have guys ready in front of the net for rebounds. Maybe even off to the side for a backdoor goal or the rebound that comes, off the pads.
Yeah. Well, for St. Louis, they're able to beat Devin Dubnyk, but they're gonna have to do more than just shoot the puck and hope for deflections and go into the net.
Well, thank God they have Tarasenko because he made it 2-1 in the third. It was assisted by Schwartz and Pietrangelo. Excuse me. Schwartz picked up a rebound and passed it behind his back to Tarasenko. I mean, that was a beautiful play.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Two of the defensemen I noticed trailed, and they were going right after Schwartz, and that's how it goes. That's how those plays are made is by bad defense.
Yeah, he made them look silly because then Tarasenko beat Dubnyk glove side and 2-0. Excuse me. And with Allen playing the net like he was, that looked like it was the deciding goal. And sure enough, it was. Because Koivu shot a wrist shot near center ice, and it went in. It was assisted by Suter. It was a funny goal.
Yeah, it was.
But see, this is what you got to do. You got to just kind of lift it just right so it bounces right in front of the goalie like it did with Jake Allen. Because it bounced about 2 feet in front of him and then hopped over his glove. And you know what? That happened to Vesa Toskala 10 years ago when the Islanders scored 180 feet away from their own net. Do you remember that goal against the Leafs? Well,
no.
It was a bouncing puck, and sure enough, it bounced 2 feet in front of Toskala over his glove and in. So you just got to make sure you got to have a little knuckle puck and just shoot it on net and hope what happens. And look at they got a free goal, and they had 12 seconds only remaining in the game, so Allen's shutout bid went away, poof. Minnesota was held to, at this point, 1 or 0 goals twice in the previous 3 games after losing this one 2-1. I mean, they had 33 shots on net. They had 14 in the third period, so they were turning it on when it was 1-0 still, because Tarasenko had yet to score.
Yeah, St. Louis really sharpened up their defense, backing up Jake Allen, and you could tell that they, even though Jake Allen has, been slumping, they're 100% behind him still.
Yeah, and they're ready now, I believe, for the playoffs.
Yeah, I would say so. I don't think that they're, I don't think that they're all there. I don't think they're going to be competitive, but you never know when it gets to the playoffs.
I think they need to play Carter Hutton a couple more times, at least, because you got to have, I think, that kind of startled play from your team. You got to be like, oh, well, we don't exactly have our starter in that. We got to play better. They need to have that play all the time, so they need to kind of play with Hutton a little bit more, I believe, to then kind of get comfortable with both goalies and get that feeling when they have Allen in net down the stretch.
Yeah, if Carl Hutton does good too, what that says is, hey, if my backup can do it, and I'm the starter, hey, I can go out and do this too.
And sure enough, Carter Hutton, another goalie from Nashville, he was Pecorino's backup last year.
Oh man, that's 6, 7 guys almost.
It seems like it's a Predators podcast, right? But we're in the Northwest Indiana area, and we're a little partial towards the Blackhawks, right, Chad?
Oh yeah.
And then for our last game, even though we're Blackhawks fans, we watched Detroit at Boston.
This one.
Man, that was a blowout. It was Wednesday night's game, March 8th, and Detroit won it 6-1.
Boston.
Boston won it 6-1.
Yeah, Detroit, we were saying that vice versa before, because Detroit, losing 6-1, we were talking about how their foulies and how they, just the story of their season, pretty much,
Yeah, it looked promising at the beginning, but now it's, they've kind of dumped a lot of their players.
Yeah, now they're just trying to find out who they got and what they're going to do.
Who works best for next year? Yeah, I mean, a lot of teams are doing that this time of year, but it's kind of weird seeing Detroit doing it, right?
Oh, man. Going to miss them in the playoffs.
Yeah, because how is their streak of consecutive?
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's been going on since I was probably like 6 years old.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that one.
So, our starting goaltenders for the game for Detroit was Jared Coro, and we had Tuukka Rask in net for Boston. It was a pretty fast first period. Boston scored 3 goals. Their first goal was by David Krejci. It was a nice, he caught a nice pass off the boards from Drew Stafford after he split the D. Detroit's DeKaiser was really caught flat-footed. He spun around like a dreidel.
Yeah, it was that 180-degree pass, going from the far side of the boards to the other side of the boards. I don't know how this puck does not get tipped, especially by a Detroit team. If this was the old Detroit team, this wouldn't have happened. This puck would have been tipped in the neutral zone, and they would have been going the other way with it.
Yeah, someone would have picked it off for sure.
Yeah, but this pass instead goes right to Krejci, and Krejci makes a little nice move and gets right past him.
And then to make it 2-0, Marchand took a nice little air pass from Pasternak and he split the D, took the puck and hit a breakaway. He scored right out for Coro's blocker.
Yeah.
It looked like Coro had a rough first period because after the third goal by Drew Stafford on short side, he was pulled. And that was 3 goals on the last 4 shots. That is... Yeah, I would pull him too.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 3 goals in 2 minutes and 25 seconds.
Yeah, unfortunately, I wonder if it changed the momentum.
And then Krejci made it 4-0 when Peter Mrazek was in net. Excuse me.
Yeah, what was it? The total was 4 goals in the first period. 4 goals.
On 15 shots.
Wow.
Boston only had 29 shots the whole game. They scored. Marchand had a nice goal assisted by Colin Miller to make it 5-0. Cronwell made it 5-1 with a goal from Green and Larkin.
That was a rifle shot, by the way. That was, the one play that Detroit was able to set up, that resulted into a goal.
It was a very nice shot by Cronwell. And speaking of Larkin, during the broadcast, I noticed that he was benched quite a bit during the second period. It looked like it was for a turnover that he made early on in the second period. And
to the Krejci goal?
I think so. And Pierre Maguire, for all his faults, brought up a really good point about Darren Larkin. He shouldn't be a center anymore.
He should be a wing.
Exactly.
I didn't know he was being the center this whole time.
Well, even Eddie Olczyk, for all his faults too, even though I'm not a fan, he's the Blackhawks guy, so I got to give him a little props there. Even he agreed that Larkin should be on the wing using his speed more because you have to have more responsibilities as a center, in the defensive zone. You of all people know that, Chad.
Yeah, definitely. And you're not using your players to their abilities, and that's always going to be a fault when your team's always going to be out of the playoffs and not winning games when you're not using your players right, and you're going to try. You're not going to the NHL is not going to let you ruin Dylan Larkin's career.
No, you gotta do some real heavy lifting as a center in the NHL. Pasternak made it 6-1 with an assist from Krejci, and that was the final score. Neither team really did anything on the power play. Detroit went 0 for 3, Boston went 0 for 2, but Boston was really owning in the face-off circle. They won 60% of the draws.
That's big difference right there.
Talk about winning face-offs, Chad. That's really what the Hawks need to do, right?
Oh, yeah.
Win 60% of the draws. I think that's the biggest differential we've seen during the games we've picked so far this year.
Yeah.
Well, we'd just like to say that you guys can find us on the Blue Line. We're on Twitter at Blueline Podcast. We're also on Facebook at On the Blue Line. YouTube at On the Blue Line. You can also find us at Jedcast Radio. WJOB 1230 AM.
104.7 FM.
WJOB1230.com. And we'd also like to welcome a new sponsor from the state of hockey. The state of hockey is Minnesota due to the numerous amateur and collegiate hockey teams, as well as the Minnesota Wild. Also, the Minnesota State Hockey Tournament, I believe, is this weekend.
Oh, that's sweet.
So, it is actually the biggest high school tournament in the nation, beating out Indiana's high school basketball tournaments and Texas's state football tournaments. It's the biggest state high school sport tournament in the nation.
Didn't you go check one out before?
Yep. It's really awesome. ESPN used to broadcast the tournaments. It was really something, and it still is. I mean, there's a ton of good teams. Too bad Edina couldn't make it this year. They lost to Wayzata.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, the Hornets couldn't make it. But it's anyone has the chance to check out the Minnesota State High School Hockey Tournament, make sure you get a chance.
You got me interested. I want to go check it out.
We got to get some news in. We had a pretty crazy week here in the NHL, man. I mean, Vegas got their first player.
Oh, yeah.
The Golden Knights, man. They finally got their first player on March 6th.
Right? Defenseman?
Yep, defenseman Reed Duke.
Reed Duke. Yeah, he's still finished up his junior season. He's a leading scorer.
I believe he's with the Brandon Wheat Kings.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a American-born player from New York.
Yeah, I think he's not a bladed player. It's kind of interesting to see Vegas, only having one player so far, but they're doing a diligent job of drafting. It looks like they're going to do a nice job in the expansion draft. They've had a lot of scouts out lately at numerous NHL rinks, watching both teams play.
Well, they're saying it's more, it's better for a team to come out now than it was back then. It was harder for them to pick up and acquire players. Now they made it a little bit more lenient, which is good. You don't want to see, your first year, you don't want to see a terrible turnout. And
that's very true. The rules are a lot easier for drafting players. Especially with the salary cap these days. San Jose's Joe Thornton became the 13th player in NHL history to reach 1,000 assists on March 6th. Also.
Yeah. Also, we have here is the first time the Zamboni was used. It was used in 1955.
Oh, man. Yeah, the Zamboni changed the hockey world. Yeah. It changed the whole ice skating world in fact. I remember reading that Sonia Haney used to have two Zambonis that would tour with her, and Arthur Wirtz, who owned the Chicago Stadium, believed that more people would watch the Zamboni than go to the concession stands. But, the Zamboni really changed the game because they had people that would have to resurface the ice, almost like a grounds crew in baseball.
Yeah, I mean, back then, like now we just take it for granted, but back then this was like the real deal. You're just like, wow, it's like a tractor on the ice.
Well, remember that one Zamboni broke down in high school? Oh man, that they had to bust another Zamboni over.
Yeah, I mean, imagine without it, you have to shovel it, and everyone.
And pour some water down. How do you make sure that it's all even and everything?
Exactly. We just take it for granted now. I have a Zamboni book. I take it for granted so much, the Zambonis, that I don't even read the book because I have no appreciation for it. But now, now I think about it. Now I do.
Well, thank you, Frank Zamboni, for inventing the Zamboni.
Thank you.
We got we have 3 games we want to preview for you guys this upcoming week.
Yeah.
Our first game is Monday, March 13th. It's going to be Tampa Bay at New York Rangers. It's going to be in Madison Square Garden. Vasilevsky's now the new goalie. He's taken over the starter's job with Bishop being traded out of Tampa Bay. Yeah,
that's one of the reasons why we wanted to see that game. And also with New York, they're missing a few guys. You said Nash.
And I believe Lundqvist didn't play last night. Last night was March 9th.
Yeah, it was Ranta and that.
Yeah, and then I also saw that the Rangers right now, as of March 10th, as of recording this podcast, March 10th in the morning, the Rangers are holding the first wild card spot.
Yeah.
ahead of the New York Islanders. But that is a wild division, the Atlantic Division. Or are they in the Metro?
I believe that they are Atlantic. Let me double
I
check
am
that
so
though.
confused with these two divisions.
I think a lot of people are. I mean, they switched them last year, didn't they? Not switched them, but the playoffs.
I don't know what they did. To be honest, I just have been enjoying all these games. But yeah, it's going to be cool seeing Tampa Bay because Stamkos might even be back. He's been practicing lately, doing non-contact drills. He's recovering from a broken leg.
Really?
Or no, his knee, excuse me. He injured his knee earlier this season. Well, our second game, it's going to be Wednesday, March 15th. It's Pittsburgh at Philadelphia.
Yeah, we're gonna follow more on that because I mean it's the Pennsylvania rivalry.
Yeah, it's the Battle of Pennsylvania. You know, Pittsburgh has really been on a tear lately, and then Philadelphia has been up and coming. They've been kind of up and down the whole year, but now they've kind of been back on track. It's going to be interesting to see if Philadelphia and Pittsburgh will both be riding high coming into this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, their streak, 4-5-1 last 10 games. They lost to Toronto last night, 2-4. But yeah, you're right. I mean, adding that skill set of Filppula, they're gonna need, obviously going into next season. They're gonna need to build more talents around them for all the grinders that they have because you can't win just on two-way forwards. You need skill. But yeah, I mean, you're right. They're gonna. You could tell. When it comes to grinding, that's what Philadelphia does.
Yeah, it seems like their only skill player really is Giroux by heart. It seems, well, it might be Mark Streit.
And,
Excuse me.
Dvorak, no. Who's number 93? I can't enunciate his name.
Voracek.
Voracek.
Yeah, Voracek. Oh, yeah, he kind of grinds it
Dyslexic over
too.
here, guys.
He's, I guess I would consider him a skill player. But yeah, you're right. They really just have grinders with Belmar, Couturier,
Matt Reed,
who was good at the beginning, but after his second or third year, he became a grinder. Braden Shen's not bad, but he's kind of a grinder still.
He's definitely like a two-way forward that just can't get, can't produce points.
Yeah.
Consistently.
It's going to be interesting. And then Thursday, right before our next podcast, Thursday, March 16th, we have the Blackhawks at the Ottawa Senators. So everyone here in the Chicagoland area will be getting to experience the Canadian anthem before this game.
Yeah, the other reason why I like this too is because we have, I mean, obviously Chicago, and we're, for the Chicago area. But also, we wanted to catch up on Ottawa and see what they're going to do because they are the most balanced team, in the standings throughout the season. And
I think so too. They've had solid goaltending, whether it be Craig Anderson, they with the team, or back home with his wife during her cancer treatment, which we hope is going well. A Park Ridge, Illinois native, so a man from the Chicagoland area. But they've also had strong goaltending from Massachusetts native Mike Condon.
Yeah.
Who wasn't even on the team to start the year.
Yeah, and he's, very capable of, carrying a team.
Yeah, and it seems as though they make a really good 1-2 punch, Anderson and
Mike Condon.
And Condon, yes. And, they have Carlson on D. They have Mathot. They have Chris Neal. They have a balance, of skill players and grit players.
Yeah, they added Burroughs and Stahlberg throughout the trade deadline, and they, their first game that we previewed last week against Colorado that they played.
Yeah, and that was Burroughs' first game.
Yeah, 2 goals, and you could tell that they're definitely building more energy through, and that makes a difference. It makes a huge difference for, going into the end of the season and seeing where you're at, and they play.
They're
going
to be ready, man. They're going to be ready. I think Ottawa's going to go in there nice and strong. Hopefully they kind of have like a lower seed and don't play New York.
Yeah, New York is. I don't know. I mean, we always know that Rick Nash isn't ready, the postseason type of player.
I think he's going to be any chance now. Rick Nash will break out in the postseason. But I think the Blackhawks will beat the Ottawa Senators. I believe it's going to be Corey Crawford against Craig Anderson in net, but I could see it being Mike Condon also starting for Ottawa.
Yeah.
They have been going either way with goaltending this year. But that's also to say that they've had good play in that. Their defense have been pretty good, especially with Carlson scoring more goals lately.
Yeah, definitely. And, they're very big on the system team, and, they're a system-based team, and, with the skill set that they have, and, also another player to watch for is Michael Hoffman.
Oh, yeah, and you also got Bobby Ryan, and you have Peugeot. They have a good mix of forwards, so it's going to be a nice matchup. Yeah. I think the Hawks are going to prevail in this one, but it's going to be a good test for the Hawks going against a faster-paced Eastern Conference team.
Definitely, and it was last year's the Eastern Conference and their speed. That was it was tough to compete for the Western Conference.
Yeah, as we all saw in the postseason, Pittsburgh really gave San Jose a run for their money with speed, which is now a way that all teams have looked like they've been going, getting away from kind of the gritty, grinding players that are like third or fourth liners. Now that everyone's going speed, which Ottawa did at the trade deadline. So it really is going to be interesting for the Blackhawks playing a faster paced team than they're used to seeing, because I think the Blackhawks are used to being one of the faster teams in the Western Conference.
Yeah, I mean, like we said earlier, they add the 8 rookies, and that obviously adds to the speed. But the first two lines
with Hartman, and you also have Jarmelson isn't as flat-footed as he used to be.
No, he's coming off the injury, and he's playing again. Him and Aduya, and
even though they might not have added any speed at the deadline, they got smarts with Oduya. So I believe the Hawks are comfortable with how they're looking down the stretch here, and I think they'll go into the playoffs with a nice hum. I see them winning the first round for sure.
Oh yeah, I can see them going further. I think that they're that good of a team.
Well, it's still the regular season, so let's not count our chickens before they're hatched, so to say, or our pucks before they hit the net, however you want to put the wording. But as we said before, you can find us on WJOB1230.com. We're also on YouTube. Yes, as you said. Where else are we at, Chad?
Jedcast.com.
Yeah, we're at jedcastradio.com, WJOB 1230 AM on your radio dials, and 104.7 on your FM radio dial. We're also on Facebook at On the Blue Line, and you can follow us on Twitter. at Blueline Podcast. I believe we also have an Instagram account now, On the Blue Line Pod 1. We're also, we're headed up on our premiere with WJOB on the radio, so we'd like to say thank you to them. We just want to say thanks to all our listeners out there for all the support, and continue to listen to us, and please subscribe on YouTube or Twitter, on Facebook. We'll always be here. So until next time, our next recording actually will be March 17th. So make sure you tune in. We got those good games coming up. Tampa Bay at New York, Pittsburgh at Philly, and Chicago at Ottawa. It's going to be nice seeing the Hawks right before the next podcast, because we love talking about the Blackhawks here at On the Blue Line.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I had a good time today, Chad. This was really good talking about hockey. I mean, we always choose some good games. It was crazy, that Detroit game with Boston, Detroit losing 6-1.
Yeah.
But otherwise, they've all been close, man.
Yeah, definitely. And, I mean, I thought the Boston-Detroit game would have been closer. It's an original 6 matchup, but hey.
Hey, we got a really good one with Chicago and Nashville, because Chicago pulled off that win.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's fun to break these games down, that's for sure.
Well, thanks again, folks. We hope to catch you next time. March 17th is the next show. Thanks for tuning in.